The night was warm, the kind of heavy summer night when the air feels thick enough to touch. Cicadas screamed in the distance, their high-pitched chorus cutting through the silence of the rural backroads. The asphalt shimmered faintly under the moonlight, though the dense trees swallowed most of it, making the road feel like a tunnel of black. Michael gripped the steering wheel tightly as he drove, the faint hum of his old Honda Civic the only sound keeping him company. He had left his friend's house later than planned, long after midnight, and now regretted it. The plan had been simple: take the highway home, get there in an hour, sleep. But the GPS had rerouted him earlier because of supposed construction. Now he was on some forgotten two-lane road cutting through farmland and forest, far from where he felt comfortable. The quiet bothered him. Summer nights were supposed to be alive, frogs croaking by creeks, the occasional car passing by, gas stations glowing like beacons in the dark. But here, there was nothing. No cars behind him, none in front. Not a single sign of life for the last 20 minutes. His phone lay in the passenger seat, the screen glowing faintly with no service. He tried not to think about it. At first he welcomed the silence. The windows were down and the warm air rushed against his face. Fireflies blinked in and out of the night, tiny sparks of light in the dark. But the longer he drove, the more the silence pressed against him. The road stretched endlessly, a black ribbon with no end. He checked the fuel gauge, half a tank left, enough to get home. Still, his eyes searched the roadside, looking for a gas station, a diner, anything. The last one he'd passed had been shuttered, its neon open sign flickering weakly, even though the doors were locked and the inside was dark. He'd slowed down then, thinking maybe someone had forgotten to turn the lights off, but the lot had been empty. Not a single car, not even a soda machine glowing in the night, just an abandoned husk of a place, standing like a skeleton on the roadside. Michael told himself it wasn't strange. Small towns had places like that all the time. Businesses died, people moved away. Nothing unusual, but as he thought back on it, he realized something. He hadn't seen a single town in miles. He tightened his grip on the wheel. The road curved, and that's when he saw it. A figure on the shoulder, caught in the sweep of his headlights. Michael's heart jumped. It looked like a man, tall, thin, wearing what seemed like a dark coat. The figure stood perfectly still, arms at its sides, facing the road as though waiting. Instinctively, Michael eased off the gas, squinting. The man's face was lost in the dark, but the outline was clear. He thought about pulling over. Maybe the guy needed help, but a cold wave of unease swept over him. Out here? At this hour? It didn't feel right. He pressed the accelerator again, heart pounding, keeping his eyes locked on the figure as the car closed in. But as the headlights fully washed over the shoulder, Michael's stomach dropped. The man was gone. He blinked, gripping the wheel tighter, his eyes darting to the mirrors. Nothing. Empty roadside. No one there. Jesus, he whispered, his throat dry. You're just tired, man. Just seeing things. He turned the radio knob, desperate for noise. Static. He twisted through the frequencies, nothing but hissing white noise. He shut it off, the silence suddenly worse. Miles slipped by. The road wound deeper into the forest, the trees pressing close, their branches arching overhead. The world outside his car felt unnatural, frozen. Then he saw another gas station. Relief flickered in him, finally. But as he slowed, his relief died. This one looked abandoned too. The pumps were rusty, leaning at odd angles. The convenience store's windows were shattered, the inside gutted and black. Weeds pushed up through cracks in the pavement. A sun-bleached sign above the building swayed faintly in the warm wind, its letters long since faded. Michael drove past quickly, trying not to look. His skin prickled, every instinct screaming at him to keep moving. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling he wasn't alone on the road. He checked his rearview mirror for the 100th time. That's when he saw headlights. Far behind him, faint at first but growing stronger, a pair of lights bobbed in the dark. Finally, another driver. He almost laughed in relief, but as minutes passed, the relief curdled. The car behind him didn't gain ground. It didn't fall back. It just stayed there, always the same distance, headlights burning into his mirror. Michael licked his lips, unease knotting his stomach. He pressed the accelerator, the Civic groaning as it picked up speed. The headlights followed. When he slowed, they slowed too. It felt deliberate. Someone was following him. Lights never left his mirror. Michael's knuckles turned white on the steering wheel as he drove faster, the road blurring past him. The Civic's engine strained, but no matter how much speed he added, the car behind him matched it. Always the same distance, always just far enough to remind him he wasn't alone. He tried to convince himself it was just a coincidence. Maybe they were going the same way. Maybe it was just another late-night driver heading home. But deep down, he didn't believe that. There was something off about the way the headlights moved. No weaving, no drifting in the lane, no sign of a human driver. Just a perfect, steady pursuit. His heart thudded in his chest. Sweat trickled down the back of his neck despite the warm wind blasting through the open window. Finally, desperate, he slowed down and pulled to the side of the road. Gravel crunched under his tires as the car rolled onto the shoulder. He killed his headlights, holding his breath, eyes locked on the mirror. The other car approached, its twin beams growing brighter. Michael's pulse pounded in his ears. Was it going to stop? Was it going to pull in behind him? But just as it drew close, the headlights blinked out. Gone. The road behind him was empty. Michael's chest rose and fell in shallow breaths. He twisted in his seat, staring out the back window. Nothing but endless blacktop stretching into the trees. "No," he muttered, his voice shaking. "I saw it. I know I saw it." He sat there for what felt like minutes, straining to hear something, anything. But the night remained silent, save for the distant buzz of cicadas and the low idle of his own engine. Finally, he pulled back onto the road. He drove slower now, his nerves raw, his eyes flicking between the darkness ahead and the empty mirror. That's when he saw another figure. This one stood in the middle of the road. Michael slammed on the brakes, tires squealing as the Civic lurched violently. His seatbelt dug into his chest, the smell of burning rubber filling the car. The headlights illuminated a man, or what looked like a man. He was tall, gaunt, his skin sickly pale under the harsh beams. He wore tattered clothes, something that might have once been a flannel shirt, now faded and torn. His face, Michael's breath caught. The man's face looked wrong. His eyes were wide and unblinking, reflecting the light like an animal's. His mouth hung open, not in shock, but in a grotesque grin, too wide, as though stretched. Michael's hands trembled on the wheel. "Move," he whispered. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, staring at him, that awful smile fixed in place. Michael shifted into reverse, his heart hammering, but before he could press the gas, the figure vanished. Gone. The road ahead was empty again. Michael sat frozen, sweat dripping down his temples. He blinked hard, rubbed his eyes, even slapped himself lightly on the cheek. You're just tired, you're imagining things. But deep down, he didn't believe that either. He drove on, forcing himself not to look into the trees on either side. Still, from the corner of his eye, he thought he saw movement. Shadows darting between trunks, shapes keeping pace with his car. His phone buzzed suddenly, making him jolt. He snatched it up with shaking hands, but the screen only showed one thing: unknown number. Michael's stomach dropped. The phone kept buzzing in his hand. Hesitant, he swiped to answer. "Hello?" At first, there was nothing. Just a hiss of static. He almost hung up. Then he heard it. A whisper. So faint he could barely make it out, but it was there, sliding through the static like a snake in the grass. "Don't stop driving." Michael's blood ran cold. He hung up instantly, tossed the phone back on the seat like it had burned him. His breathing quickened. He pressed harder on the accelerator, desperate to put distance between himself and whatever this was. The road dipped and curved, and for a moment he thought he was finally free of it all. But then, in the mirror, the headlights returned. They were closer this time. Too close. The light filled his car, blinding him, the beams glaring through the back window. Michael cursed, trying to focus on the road ahead, but the car behind him was practically on his bumper now. "Back off!" he shouted, his voice cracking. He swerved slightly, but the other car mirrored his every move. Panic clawed at his chest. He slammed the gas pedal to the floor, the Civic roaring as it pushed past 80. The road whipped by in a blur, but the lights stayed right there, unshaken, unrelenting. Then the road forked. Michael had no time to think. He jerked the wheel right, tires screeching as he veered onto a narrower lane, branches brushing the sides of his car. He glanced in the mirror. Empty. The headlights were gone. Michael gasped for breath, his entire body trembling. He slowed, the car rattling on the rough pavement, every nerve in his body screaming. He wanted to believe it was over, that whoever, or whatever it was, had lost him. But the silence felt heavier now, and as he rounded the next bend, his headlights swept across something that made his stomach lurch. On the side of the road stood a row of figures, 5 of them, all facing the road, all perfectly still, and every single one wore that same stretched... Michael's stomach turned as the car rolled past the row of grinning figures. His eyes stayed glued to the road, but every nerve in his body screamed at him to look back. He couldn't. If he did, he knew he'd see them still staring, those stretched mouths, those wide, glassy eyes tracking him in the dark. His breathing came fast and shallow. The Civic rattled over potholes as the narrow lane twisted deeper into the woods. The forest loomed taller here, branches clawing overhead like skeletal hands. For a few miles, nothing happened. The night swallowed him whole, silent except for the thrum of the engine. But the silence wasn't comforting. It was suffocating. Then, without warning, the dashboard lights flickered. Michael's eyes snapped down. The speedometer needle jerked erratically, bouncing from 60 to 0 to 60 again. The radio, though turned off, crackled faintly, spitting out bursts of static. "No, no, no! Don't do this!" Michael muttered, slapping the dashboard. The headlights dimmed, then flared back to life, dimmed again. The engine coughed, shuddered, and the whole car began to lose power. "Come on! Not now!" He pressed the gas, but the car only wheezed like it was choking. A moment later, the headlights cut out completely, and the Civic rolled to a dead stop in the middle of the black road. Michael sat frozen, hands still clutching the wheel. The only light came from the faint glow of the dashboard, and then that, too, died. Total darkness. The forest around him pressed in, thick and silent. Michael swallowed hard, his throat dry. He reached for his phone on the passenger seat, but the screen was black. He held the power button. Nothing. Dead. For a moment, he just sat there, staring into the dark, his own reflection barely visible in the glass of the windshield. That's when he heard it. A knock. Soft, deliberate, from the roof of the car. Michael's breath caught in his throat. He didn't move, didn't even blink. Then, knock, knock, knock. This time harder. The roof groaned slightly with the weight of something pressing down on it. "No," Michael whispered. His heart thudded so hard it hurt. Slowly he reached for the keys, twisting the ignition. The engine coughed, but didn't catch. Again. Nothing. Again. Only silence. The knocking stopped. For a moment there was nothing. Then came the whisper, faint, like a voice pressed against the glass of his window. "Michael." His blood ran cold. The voice knew his name. Shaking, he turned his head toward the driver's side window. Nothing but his own reflection stared back. He forced himself to look the other way, toward the passenger window. And that's when he saw it. A pale face pressed against the glass. Its skin was grey and stretched too tight, its eyes round and bulging, unblinking. The mouth grinned wide, impossibly wide, teeth scraping the glass as it smiled at him. Michael screamed, stumbling back in his seat. He fumbled for the door lock, yanked it down hard, though some part of him knew it wouldn't matter. When he looked again, the face was gone. Panting, trembling, he grabbed the door handle. He had to run. He couldn't stay in the car. But as his hand touched the handle, the woods around him erupted with sound. Crunch, leaves, footsteps, one set, then another, then more. They were moving all around the car, circling, slow, deliberate. Michael locked the doors again and pressed himself against the seat, heart hammering. Shapes flickered at the edge of his vision, shadows darting between trees. And then, thump. Something hit the trunk of the car, hard. Michael cried out, twisting in his seat. A dent bulged inward, as though something had struck it from outside. Another thump, this time against the hood. The car rocked slightly. They were surrounding him. He grabbed the keys again, twisting desperately. This time the engine roared to life, lights flaring. Relief surged through him. Without thinking, he slammed the car into drive and floored it. The Civic leapt forward, gravel spraying. The headlights swept across the trees, and for a split second, they revealed them. Dozens. Figures standing between the trees, each with that same grotesque grin, faces pale, eyes gleaming in the light. They didn't move, didn't flinch, just watched. Michael screamed and pressed harder on the gas, the car flying down the narrow road. His vision blurred with tears, his hands slick with sweat. He didn't care where the road led, he just had to get away. But then ahead the road split again. Left or right? He chose right. Tires screeched as he swerved, nearly losing control. The car fishtailed, then straightened out, his chest heaved, lungs burning. For a moment, the road was empty, silent. No figures, no headlights behind him, just the Civic's engine straining in the summer night. He almost let himself believe he'd escaped, but then he glanced at the mirror. A face stared back at him, from the back seat. Michael's heart froze as his eyes locked on the mirror. The reflection showed a pale, grinning face sitting in the back seat, directly behind him. Its skin was stretched tight across sharp cheekbones, its bulging eyes unblinking. The mouth was wide, too wide, teeth glistening in the dim glow of the dashboard. Michael whipped around, gasping. The back seat was empty. But when he looked forward again, the figure was still in the mirror. He couldn't breathe. His hands shook violently on the wheel, and every instinct screamed at him to stop the car, to throw himself out into the night and run. But his legs wouldn't move. His body refused to obey. The reflection leaned forward, its face drawing closer to his own in the mirror. Michael's pulse roared in his ears as the thing's lips peeled back further, revealing rows of jagged teeth. And then he felt it. Breath. Cold, damp breath against the back of his neck. Michael screamed, swerving wildly. The Civic jolted, tires screeching as the car nearly spun off the road. He gripped the wheel with all his strength, forcing it straight again, chest heaving. "Leave me alone," he shouted, his voice cracking. But the figure only laughed. A low, guttural sound that echoed inside the car, even though the back seat was still empty when he dared glance over his shoulder. His eyes darted back to the mirror. Now there were two faces, both grinning, both leaning closer. Michael slammed his foot on the accelerator, the Civic roaring as it pushed past 90. The road blurred into darkness, trees flashing by like black pillars. His vision swam, panic making it hard to see, hard to think. He just knew he had to get away from the car, the road, the faces. The laughter grew louder, surrounding him, rattling in his skull. The mirror showed more and more faces filling the back seat, grinning, pale, with those wide, soulless eyes. Their mouths moved in unison, whispering words he couldn't understand, except for one. Stay. Michael shouted and reached up, slamming the mirror with his fist. The glass cracked, spiderwebbing instantly. The faces distorted, twisted, and then vanished. For a moment, the car was silent again, save for his ragged breathing. He gripped the wheel tighter, tears streaking his face. But ahead, the road ended. A giant oak tree loomed at the end of the lane, filling his headlights. Michael screamed and yanked the wheel. The Civic skidded violently, spinning out of control. Tires screamed, dirt sprayed, and the car slammed sideways into a ditch. The airbags exploded with a deafening pop, slamming into him. Then silence. Michael groaned, dazed. His ears rang, his body throbbed with pain. The windshield was shattered, smoke hissed from the engine. He tried to move, but his seatbelt pinned him tight. Through the broken glass, he saw movement. Figures. They emerged from the trees, one by one, their shapes flickering in the pale glow of the headlights. Dozens of them, maybe more, forming a circle around the wreck. Every single one wore that grotesque, stretched grin. Michael clawed at the seatbelt, desperate, sobbing. It wouldn't budge. He turned his head wildly, searching for something, anything. That's when the passenger door creaked open. Slowly. Michael froze, tears blurring his vision. He turned his head just in time to see a pale hand, impossibly long fingers curling around the doorframe. The door swung wider and one of the grinning figures leaned inside, its bulging eyes fixed on him, its mouth opening wider and wider until the skin at the corners cracked. Michael screamed, and the world went black. Epilogue. The next morning, a local farmer drove past the narrow lane and noticed a car in the ditch. The front end was crumpled, the windshield shattered. Inside, the vehicle was empty. The driver's door hung open, the seatbelt was torn, ripped clean through as though by something far stronger than human hands. And on the cracked rearview mirror, written in smeared condensation, were two words, "Stay forever." The glass cracked, spiderwebbing instantly. The faces distorted, twisted, and then vanished. For a moment, the car was silent again, save for his ragged breathing. He gripped the wheel tighter, tears streaking his face. But ahead, the road ended. A giant oak tree loomed at the end of the lane, filling his headlights. Michael screamed and yanked the wheel. The Civic skidded violently, spinning out of control. Tires screamed, dirt sprayed, and the car slammed sideways into a ditch. The airbags exploded with a deafening pop, slamming into him. Then silence. Michael groaned, dazed. His ears rang, his body throbbed with pain. The windshield was shattered, smoke hissed from the engine. He tried to move, but his seatbelt pinned him tight. Through the broken glass, he saw movement. Figures. They emerged from the trees, one by one, their shapes flickering in the pale glow of the headlights. Dozens of them, maybe more, forming a circle around the wreck. Every single one wore that grotesque, stretched grin. Michael clawed at the seatbelt, desperate, sobbing. It wouldn't budge. He turned his head wildly, searching for something, anything. That's when the passenger door creaked open. Slowly. Michael froze, tears blurring his vision. He turned his head just in time to see a pale hand, impossibly long fingers curling around the doorframe. The door swung wider and one of the grinning figures leaned inside, its bulging eyes fixed on him, its mouth opening wider and wider until the skin at the corners cracked. Michael screamed, and the world went black. Epilogue. The next morning, a local farmer drove past the narrow lane and noticed a car in the ditch. The front end was crumpled, the windshield shattered,